Hey guys, this is Russ. I winked at you, you can't tell, I got my sunglasses on. So this is the next edition of Politics from the Road. I'm here to talk to you about a couple things. You know, the main one lately has been the delegates in the Democratic race. Everyone's saying, oh, it's virtually impossible, or it is impossible, it's mathematically impossible, or, you know, Hillary's got an insurmountable lead. And I don't disagree with that. You know, I mean, she may not hit the number she needs before the convention because the superdelegates aren't counted until the convention, and without the superdelegates she may not hit 2,300, so it may go to a floor fight or open floor vote, whatever it's called. But you know, it saddens me because the current process for selecting the candidate is not effective. As a result, you're not getting the strongest candidate. And that's what makes me sad, because as a result, we select a candidate that is weak and may not be the Democrats' best chance of beating the Republican nominee. At this point, it's Trump. It's not going to change. It is Trump. So let me explain that a little bit. So right now, Hillary's ahead by like 300 delegates, not including supers. Okay? In the beginning, very competitive with, New Hampshire, he killed her, right? But Iowa, Nevada, both very close. All right, but then you start getting the southern states, Super Tuesday, you know, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama. One or two of those was a couple days before or a couple days after the big Super Tuesday, like March 1st or whatever it was. But all the southern states. And Hillary overwhelmingly won those states. And that's really the bulk of her lead. If those states would not have voted that day, we would see a completely different race. Okay? Those states gave her a huge lead from the beginning. And ever since then, people haven't been able to get their minds past it. It's always seemed like Hillary has a huge lead. But that's misleading, because those states are all basically the southern states, right? They have a high black voting per population. And I would argue that's a demographic that's hard to penetrate, right? I mean, Bernie's a new guy to the field. He's from up north. You know, he didn't have much time to introduce himself to these voters. He did very well in New Hampshire, Iowa, and Nevada because he had time to campaign through the states and people get to know him. But in the South, all of a sudden you've got 10, 15 states. How can someone who's new to the political environment do well there? And that's a problem regardless, right? We can't argue that. It doesn't matter who it is. That's a part of the primary process. But by having all those states voting at the same time that early and so concentrated with a demographic that takes a lot longer to introduce yourself to, because Bernie's policies are a lot better for the blacks than Hillary's. You can't argue that at all. Decriminalize marijuana, have daycare before elementary school, quality daycare, and then make it a lot easier to afford college tuition, infrastructure program that provides jobs, minimum wages that helps people have livable incomes, which reduces crime, which that's a proven fact, right? So you can't argue that his platform is better for the African American population. But by having all those states go early, now we have this, this big lead for Hillary that has really not changed, right? I would argue that Florida, you can put in a similar bucket. It's a closed primary state, so Bernie couldn't have all the independents vote for him and also some Republicans. And that's a really, really big amount of people. And also the registration was, pretty early. Similar to New York. You have registration that's too early, and you don't give people time to see the candidates and switch so they can make their vote. Right? And so I would argue that if you take away the delegates that Hillary netted from Florida and the southern states, take those away, she has virtually no lead, like 20 delegates. Okay? And I think at this point it doesn't matter because she already has those delegates. You can't change that. But I think it helps to understand, to look at the election in a different way. And I'll get there. I'm trying to sort of set the stage for my point. So just bear with me, okay? So if you take away that lead and you look at the race since every other state except for the southern states and except for Florida, it's shocking because it's 50-50. I mean, New York was Hillary's home state, so if you were to remove that, Bernie's actually beating her. And he will continue to beat her, I think, through the rest of the race. And so you take away those states, not just because it's a Hillary advantage, but because it makes it harder for a newcomer to have, a good shot at becoming the nominee, right? So if you remove that, you see that he is actually the guy who's winning, And it's a shame because the super delegates can't, they typically go with whoever's winning the pledged delegate vote. So since the beginning, Hillary's had this huge lead, and so all the super delegates went and took sides early. And ever since then, they haven't really changed. She's so far in the lead, and they, even if they want to, they don't really have a public justification for doing so. Right? So having that initial burst of delegates changed everything. If that wasn't the case, the super delegates would look completely different right now. Completely. I'm not saying they'd all be for Bernie, but you would see a lot more people switching. It would be a lot harder for them to justify them being for Hillary if she obviously would not be overwhelmingly in the lead. She may not have even been in the lead. I will point out that New York registration closed like last year, something crazy like that. So, he won 40% of Democrats. I could go on about New York. That was a big freaking deal. He did amazing. Too bad enough people don't understand what happened, but he did amazing in New York. He's born there, but that's her home turf. 40%. That's a big deal. All right, so the final point I wanted to make is that we have a process that's really electing the wrong candidate. Because of that initial burst of states that Hillary won, primarily because they're just hard to penetrate, you could argue she's better for them. I don't think that's true, but, because of that, now you have a candidate who's pretty much ever since then had a much easier time, manipulating the story to say that she has an insurmountable lead. And so the problem with that is you have a candidate who is nominated who really isn't that good, right? A lot of people don't like Hillary. She's got a lot of baggage. As this race has played out, the emails is boiling. Eventually it's just going to blow up. That's bad, And then there's Libya. That was like her signature achievement as Secretary of State. But then it started getting worse, and now, defense is telling us ISIS is so bad, American troops might have to get. There was a Senate, hearing about this. It's bad. Libya is a complete mess. There's that, and then there's the Clinton Foundation, and is there corruption? Is there money laundering? And then Bill, is he going to be like the next Cosby? Are we just going to start seeing women coming out of the woodworks? Sex addict and all this stuff. And she's, Republicans have their own problem, and I get that. Trump has done overwhelmingly well in the primary, but, Republican primary voters are typically more extreme, or you could say more conservative, than general election conservative voters. So he's done very well, but it's a sliver of the Republican Party who's saying that. So we'll see how that pans out. They got their own problem. But still, even as much of a monster as that guy is, and his platform, how much racism it allows, he's still beating Hillary in some polls in swing states, in Ohio, Pennsylvania. These things are all close, and that's bad. So now the Democrats are stuck. Ever since that, March 1st vote, they've pretty much, there was nothing that could be done to really eliminate Hillary as the Democratic nominee. But that's not good because, Democrats are not getting the stronger candidate. So that's what this video is about. There's a lot more I could do on this, and it's hard just talking to a camera. If I was talking to a person, I could go more in depth and sort of, pause and refine my message at certain points. But, that's what I got for today. Leave me some comments. Let me know if you had questions, something wasn't clear, or if you think otherwise. And I'd love to respond or make another video. All right, guys. Keep chugging.